Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 464 How Prejudice Plagues the Heart, Part 4 The Impact of Irreverence Within Your Heart. The podcast objectives are reveal the primary source of nonconformance, reveal why irreverence plagues your spiritual heart, and analyze how irreverence works against your faith. The primary source of nonconformance. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 311 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we analyze the impact of amorality and the great danger that comes when there is a wall between your heart and your mind. If you recall, amorality is the fundamental degree of prejudice. Ergo, to understand the full impact of prejudice, we must analyze the impact of its focal degree next. Enter irreverence. Now, it goes without saying that irreverence picks up where amorality left off. Per the diagram below, amorality compromises the sensory region of your physical heart, i.e., your left complex. Ergo, there is only one division within your heart left for irreverence to compromise. Enter the sensory region of your spiritual heart. Let's talk about it. Now, first things first, your spiritual heart at this juncture is still receiving spiritual data points from your mind concerning an informed thought. This is because the wall formed by amorality is between your physical mind and your physical heart. Notwithstanding, we still have a huge problem vis-a-vis the thought you receive from your spiritual mind is transferred into a faculty that is being controlled by a stronghold of unrighteousness. Ergo, it will get nowhere in your heart. And yet, in the spirit of perfect imperfection, the disease of prejudice will not stop there. Quite the contrary, it will look to achieve the same result in your spiritual heart it achieved in your physical heart by rearing up the stronghold of amorality. To this end, prejudice places the stronghold of irreverence within the sensory region of your spiritual heart. And to understand how disastrous this is, we should reconsider a definition of irreverence. By definition, irreverence is a deficiency in veneration, honor, regard, or respect, a lack of reverence specifically for official, important, or holy matters. Now, within this definition lies a key variation between irreverence and amorality. To wit, amorality is more pervasive than irreverence, for the latter is an evolution of the former. For where there is no amorality, there can be no irreverence. Along these lines, amorality is a complete abandonment of ethics, standards, and principles, all of which are manifested by a physical model of compliance. Here lies the inflection and the connection, my friends. Consider this. Noncompliance is the primary application of amorality. Ergo, amorality is the primary source and driver of noncompliance. We know this because it is impossible to comply with any standard if you have eradicated the standard. Now, due to the regressive nature of lawlessness, the same rule must apply to irreverence, i.e., the focal degree of prejudice, and nonconformance, i.e., the focal degree of disobedience. Consider this. Nonconformance is the primary application of irreverence. Ergo, irreverence is the primary source and driver of nonconformance. We know this because you will not follow the rules of an authority figure you do not respect. A very powerful strategy. Now, continuing with the key variation between irreverence and amorality. The former is much more specific. We know this because rules are more specific than standards, and irreverence is designed to cause you to break the rules via nonconformance. Ergo, irreverence must be designed to plague your spiritual heart. For nonconformance plagues your spiritual mind. You learn this in End Times 367, How Disobedience Plagues the Mind, Part 4, which was posted on November 6, 2024. Per the diagram below, you can clearly see how nonconformance plagues your execution zone, situated at the bottom right of the diagram. Not only this, but you can also see how your execution zone is within your right brain, vis-a-vis your spiritual mind. The reason behind this alignment is sure, vis-a-vis nonconformance is an evolution of noncompliance. Likewise, your execution is an evolution of your plans. Ergo, noncompliance must plague your physical mind, and nonconformance must plague the spiritual. As you would expect, the same rule applies to irreverence, as you can see by the diagram below. To wit, irreverence is an evolution of amorality. Likewise, your spiritual senses within your heart are dictated and hardened by your physical senses. This is why the spirit of contempt employs the spirit of dishonesty to attack your physical heart as a priority. Besides the fact that we have the Ruach of Elohim within our spiritual hearts, it is for the following reason. Due to the influence of carnal desire and the fact that the planning and execution zones within your heart are not connected, your physical heart has the power to redefine your spiritual heart. And this is true even if you have the set apart spirit. My dear friends, this is why we are commanded to guard our hearts. And it is why I have spent many podcasts speaking to the great peril of this facet of our beings. Trust me, even with the set apart spirit, your wars with prejudice and contempt will be two of the most difficult wars you ever fight. And one of the primary reasons why is because the environment of your heart is ultra conducive for lawlessness to wage a strategic campaign. And the positioning of irreverence within your spiritual heart to complement the work of immorality in your physical heart is a very, very powerful strategy. To lean into the chaos. Now, it goes without saying that this perilous reality should not disquiet any true contender for the seal of Elohim. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, the fact that the enemy has a good strategy will only make you stronger and your victory that much sweeter. The key is you must get the victory. And the only way to get the victory is by understanding the enemy and his strategy. Ergo, we must continue analyzing the impact of irreverence in your spiritual heart. Along these lines, irreverence, like immorality, takes on the nature of a thought shield. Accordingly, it will determine if a thought originating from your spiritual mind will pass into your spiritual heart. In doing so, it will force the creativity zone within your spiritual heart to be defined by irreverence. That includes your interpretation of concepts, imagination, and truth. You can see this by observing the top right hand corner of the diagram below. Now, here lies the problem, a huge problem. And it is such an immense problem, I will capture it with an inflection point. Consider this, my friends, and be advised. The creativity zones within your spiritual heart and your spiritual mind are faith multipliers. To wit, they allow your mind and your heart to conceive how the Father's will could come to pass via truth and divine imagination. Along these lines, it is crucial for you to conceive the Father's will at the high level and at the detailed level. And yet, it is more important to conceive his will at the high level. Here is why. If you fail to conceive the Father's will at a high level, i.e., concepts, then you will struggle to believe all things are possible. For where there is no concept, there can be no faith. My dear friends, here lies the problem. To wit, we have nothing apart from faith. For faith is the foundation of all things spiritual and divine. Therefore, if your spiritual senses are corrupted, you will never conceive and thus perceive the Father's will at any level. Not only this, but if you cannot conceive Yahuwah's will at the high level, you will never conceive his will at the detailed level. And if you cannot conceive his will at the detailed level, you will never succeed in walking by faith and the fear of Elohim. Here is why. Your conception of faith occurs in your spiritual mind. Ergo, if you cannot conceive faith in your spiritual mind, you will be forced to utilize the resources of your physical mind. Here lies the problem. To wit, faith cannot be conceived by your physical mind. Why? It's because your physical mind is logical. It is analytical. It is a problem-solving faculty designed to evaluate concrete data and facts. This is why your physical mind cannot conceive faith, for faith is not logical. It resists the analytical. It invites problems, and it thrives in an environment with little to no data and incomplete facts. And thus, when you lean unto your physical mind, you operate outside the boundaries of faith and you walk by sight. And those who walk by sight cannot possibly walk in the fear of Elohim. And this, my friends, is why irreverence, like nonconformance, is so very deadly. To wit, by shielding your spiritual heart from faith, it forces you to lean unto the resources within your physical heart, which is immensely worse than your physical mind. Remember, your physical heart, unlike your physical mind, is not logical. Quite the contrary, it is chaotic. As you can see by the diagram below, your physical heart is indifferent. It is a fortress of lawlessness, and it thrives in an environment defined by theory. Ergo, the spirit of prejudice employs the spirit of irreverence to corrupt your spiritual heart, to force you to lean into the chaos within your physical heart. Now, Once the creativity zone within your spiritual heart is conquered by irreverence, it will be transformed into a zone of deception. This is a key downfall, which I caution you to consider carefully and be advised. If your creativity zone is conquered by irreverence, you will be persistently deceived into taking irreverent acts while believing you are yet in the Father's will. This is precisely why you see so many within the dying nation of Israel persistently engaging in irreverent acts who are completely oblivious to what they are doing. It is because their creativity zone has become a zone of deception. Not only this, but it has been weaponized to do them great harm. To wit, the spirit of irreverence has weaponized their spiritual heart to deceive them into believing they are walking in the fear of Elohim without fearing Elohim. Not only this, but the only other major zone within your heart is defined by chaos. Ergo, once irreverence has completed his counterwork, your heart will be fixed in deception and chaos with no boundaries and no limit to what evil you can get into, and no limit to what evil may come your way. My dear friends, this is the impact of irreverence. And yet, the damage of prejudice is not finished. The damage of prejudice is not done. Now, here is the final word. The quickest path to spiritual severance is a heart filled with the spirit of irreverence. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, as easy as this matter is to understand, it is even more difficult to resolve. The reason why is sure. Although many of us don't want to admit it, we engage in the spirit of irreverence all the time. And no wonder there are 16 degrees of perfection we must master before we obtain the fear of Elohim. And until we do, our realities are all the same. We have a desire to walk in the fear of Elohim and to reverence him in spirit and in truth. But whereas the spirit is indeed willing, the flesh is very much weak. And so there are two paths you can follow. Vis-a-vis, you can't ignore the fact that you are infected with the spiritual virus of irreverence, or you can put in the work required to eliminate every adverse factor preventing you from walking by faith and in the fear of Elohim. Heretofore, I recommend take door number 2. Trust me, no good will ever come when you lie to yourself, for you are creating an illusion, which leads to disregard and error, misconception and confusion. Then comes denial, and then comes delusion. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on the word you have heard today. And as always, ask the Father to reveal the truth to you. For the children of Elohim live by conviction. And if he has not convicted you, or if you had not heard him concerning these matters, you should pray until you do. Today, I want you to meditate on the word I have shared. Specifically, I want you to meditate on the impact of irreverence and consider if there are any occasions of irreverence in your life, no matter how big or small. Remember, it doesn't take a large measure of irreverence to sink your spiritual ship. All it takes is a little leaven to nullify all your acts of righteousness, which makes sense. For Reverence is the primary application of righteousness. Therefore, if you seek his kingdom and his righteousness, seek first to fear him and to walk in the spirit of reverence. And always remember, there is a great deal of work you must complete to succeed in this endeavor. So succeed and get to work. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 464, How Prejudice Plagues the Heart, Part 4. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 465, How Prejudice Plagues the Heart, Part 5. I will post this podcast on Friday, May 9th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim, continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.